I'm going to walk you through the process. Like I'm going to have it so that by the end of this, every single one of you will actually have a mini game that you can actually play. And from there, you'll be able to build it, grow it out however you want, and then show it to your students and have them do the same thing. So that's sort of the impetus behind this. So this is definitely not something I invented by any means. It's a tutorial from the Raspberry Pi Foundation through their website. So it's a great resource to then use with your students as you help them build it and craft their game. But I utilized it with sixth grade ELA class, and the kids just loved it. It was so much fun, and most importantly, it really helped a lot of them work on proofreading and creative writing skills. So that's actually been a really nice part of it as well. So let us get busy with this presentation. So here we go. There we go. So coded an RPG game. There's my contact information. You saw that there too. So you can take a look at that if you want to reach out and share what we're doing here. The coded an RPG game. So the first thing, if you haven't done it yet, please go to trinket.io and sign up for an account. That is number one thing that you want to do. You could use this without creating an account, but then your game will be lost if you don't create an account and save it. So we definitely want everyone to be able to save the things that they create. Sign up however you want. When I work with our students, we're a Google school, so we have them sign in with their Google account. So it's a very simple sign in for them. So I think that's really important for getting kids on board. So if you are doing this digitally, remotely, you're going to want our kids to easily sign in. But if you're in an Edmodo group or use Clever, it's a very simple way to sign in. So I will give you guys a minute or two to go ahead and sign in. How many people do we have here? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we have 8 people. If you can give me a thumbs up or something text-wise in the chat to let me know you're good to go. That way I'll be able to see 8 people ready to roll on, and I'll get started with the next step. So if you've created it, boom, Susan Jones, bam, good. Clement, bam, good. Mike is good. Chris created and logging in on another computer. Good. Yeah, it's good. So it's tough to do a webinar and do something on a web page. I think for some people that can be kind of a pain. So if you had another device, that works. Otherwise, on my Mac, what I'm going to be doing is doing a lot of swiping left and right, going back and forth between what I'm doing and the webinar page. So definitely don't feel too stressed if you're doing the same thing. Okay, Matt, Chris, Mike, Matt, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Waiting for, it looks like Richard. And I think that's Richard, and I'm not sure who this one is because they don't have their name. It's just a picture. So I'll give it another minute or so. And then we'll just move on because it looks like Richard and one other person have not. Oops. Okay, let's get rolled. So another thing I want you guys to do is open up a new tab on your browser and go ahead and type up this https://bit.ly 36q capital B P lower capital X, excuse me, lowercase u. So would you go ahead and type that into your browser as well? Excellent. Perfect. The Raspberry Pi page has loaded. Excellent. So that's going to be our guide as we build this game out for everyone. So it's going to be a great resource. Definitely bookmark it. It's what you're going to use with your students. So you definitely want to save that for later use. Another second here before I jump on to the next one. And type in this one. So that one will take you to the Trinket page that is saved and stored on there. So everyone should have that one. It should take you to that Trinket, which is this awesome game right here that you will see momentarily. Here we go. There it is. So that's where everyone should be. Perfect. People are jumping in to the chat and sharing. Excellent. Great job, people. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So this is the skeleton of the game that you will be using to build what your game looks like. So eventually you will have something that looks super crazy and complex like my game, which has a ton of rooms and libraries and things of that nature to create a super complex game the more and more you play with it. So it's something that I never thought I'd be able to do. And it blows my mind that I did it and kids play it. I still have spelling errors. And occasionally I find mistakes as I play it, and the kids point them out to me, which is great. But it's been fun. So, one of the things about this entire process that I want to note is that it's totally awesome for supporting our students in terms of creative writing, and big one is proofreading, because writing code is all about proofreading. You have to do lots and lots and lots of proofreading, and you're gonna want to make sure the kids spend the time learning how to do that, because without that you don't have much of anything else. So before we jump into the next steps of like creating this, does anyone have any questions in the chat? What was the bit.ly link? So the bit.ly link, I will post that back up here in 1 second. And was back one. Here we go. I will post it in the chat so that you can have access to it. And in the chat, here it goes. There you go, in the chat. So go ahead and click on that link and that'll take you right where you need to be. So let's go to the Raspberry Pi page and let's walk ourselves through the basics. So the basic introduction is nice and it gives you a quick little game that you can play. But the whole idea about this small little project is to create a house with a few rooms and to put a monster in an item and try to avoid getting eaten by the monster. It's a pretty simple game on its face value, but it's definitely one that once you sort of understand the mechanics, it's brilliant and you'll have lots and lots of fun. So let's jump into adding new rooms. So we're just going to jump right away. And what's really nice, it gives you what you'll need. It'll give you what you will learn and any additional information from educators. This is really great. The Raspberry Pi website provides you all of this wonderful information that you can use. So definitely check this out here. So we're going to go ahead and join us clicking adding new rooms. Boop. And you can see that. I'm gonna make sure the chat's there. Excellent. So they give you the link to the starter one, which we have over here already, the basic one. So that one's already open for all of you, so you don't have to worry about that. And then they have the basic RPG structure. And this is what's really, really nice. So I encourage you and your students to actually draw out the rooms that you're going to build in this game. The visual aspect of this is so incredibly important when it comes to making a super complex game. When it's like a 3-room game, a 2-room game, it's very easy to wrap your head around. The game I created, this guy has a lot of rooms. It has, I believe, 44 rooms is what it has, is something that the students counted. That's a lot of rooms. And so for me to take that and just keep it in my head would be extremely difficult. So I love this concept of just drawing it out very simply so that there's always a visual representation of what's going on. So as it shows us here, it's a very basic game, 2 rooms. You can type go south to move from the hall to the kitchen. And then you can write go north to go back to the hall again, right? It's a very simple aspect of the game. But what happens when you type in a direction you can't go? So it says type go west in the hall and you'll get a friendly error message. So if you were to go back to your code and you ran it, you'll notice on the side, there it is, I write go west, and it says just that. You can't go that way. So if you find the rooms variable, you can see the map is coded as a dictionary of rooms. So you see this image here. So if you go back to the code on the left-hand side, you'll see here are the codes, right, for the rooms. So we have one that's labeled the hall, and then the directions that you can go, and then where that will take you. So if you're in the hall and you go south, you'll go to the kitchen. If you're in the hall and you go east, you'll go to the dining room. If you're in the kitchen and go north, you'll go back to the hall. So those are 2 rooms with 3 directions. And it's really, really important that we pay attention to where things are going. A common mistake is that you don't have the opposing direction set correctly. So if you're in the hall and go south and it takes you to the kitchen, then you have to go north in the kitchen to get to the hall. If you don't, your code will get super confusing and you'll end up with a lot of errors down the line. So if you've noticed, this is where we will add all of the rooms. And the format of it is pretty simple. So you always have this and this bracket left alone. Everything else you will build on the inside of it. So you add the room, colon, bracket, and then you put the directions on the inside, close it, comma. This is a big one that people often forget. You need a comma after every single room except the final one. So again, think of writing, right? These are examples. So as you add a comma, you're going to add another example. If you add a comma, you'll have another example. Except once you have the last example, you don't need a comma, right? Right. So we're going to add a room. And it's pretty simple once we get through that. You need to add a 3rd room called the dining room. Okay? And you're going to link it to the hall to the west. So as we look at this, notice the formatting of it. So after the kitchen, we have that comma. We're going to add dining room, colon, bracket, west, colon, hall, end bracket. So we're going to add this. What's really nice is that you can copy it. This is the best part. You can just go ahead and copy, go back to your code, and paste. And there we have it. So we've added the dining room, we've added the direction to the west, and there we go. So if we stopped our game and ran it again, we would go east, and we're in the dining room. And then if we were to type go west, back in the hall. So one of the things to make sure as you copy and paste this that it's all lined up correctly. And this is just sort of like my OCD about code, but there's a good reason to keep things sort of orderly. It helps catching errors much easier. So as you look at how all of these are sort of placing up next to one another, I like to keep all of the close brackets for each room lined up. It just makes things a little bit easier to look, especially if you're trying to see if you have all the commas in the right spot. That's just a tip for me to you guys and my students all the time, because usually one of the biggest mistakes that they'll have is a lacking of a comma, in that they have a direction going to a room that either doesn't exist or it's supposed to be going to a different room because I've typed in the wrong one. So some other things to pay attention to with all of this: capitalization and spelling matters. Okay, so this hall is capitalized. That means this hall has to be capitalized and that hall has to be capitalized. Okay, so everything needs to be identical. And when it comes to kids and typing, that can be very tough. But that's where the proofreading comes in, and the proofreading is very, very, very important. It's a great skill for them to work on, especially peer editing. It's great to give it to other people and have them look at your code. So we have 3 rooms and we're feeling really good about it. As we try out the new game, we already did it. One of the things I actually like about this is that they give you these check marks. So if you accomplish something, you can actually check off where you are as you sort of build this code. So as you go through the Raspberry Pi site, these little check marks are really neat. It helps just sort of pace where you are and what you're doing. So the challenge is add new rooms. Can you add more rooms to your game? For example, you could create a living room to the south of the dining room. Remember to add a door to and from one of the other rooms. So as you look at exploring and adding new rooms, right? The process to do so, again, is very simple. One of the things that I like to do is like copy everything again and then paste again and then change it. So we have a dining room. I'm going to call this a living room, right? And I'm going to add a direction. Let's say west takes me to the living room. Perfect. Then I know that going east will take me to the hall. So if I did this correctly, and I run my game, and I go west, I'm in the living room. And if I go east, I'm back in the hall. So when you're making a lot of rooms, like I did, I made a lot of rooms, I totally did the copy and paste approach. And the copy and paste approach was super nice because it really, really allowed me to just mass produce rooms. And my visual drawing allowed me to make sure what rooms were connecting to the other room. So having all of that mapped out and laid out was super helpful to all of this. So hopefully you guys added a room. You can add a living room. If we go back to my game, some of my rooms here, I've got an attic, a 3rd floor hallway, playroom, closet, child's reading room, laundry room, bathroom, sewing room, trophy room, fabric room, armory, painting room, pottery room, and so on. So it's a lot of rooms. So it's a lot of copying and pasting, that's for sure. So we're going to go to the next step, which is adding an item. So adding an item to the room is easy, right? You can add it to any room that you want, And what you're going to do is you're going to add it to the room's dictionary. So every room that you've created, you can really put whatever you want into it. So this is a pretty straightforward one. So in the hall, we're going to add item and then key. So when we look at our code, we have here, we can add item and then key. Pretty straightforward with the code there. So once you have that, you'll notice that the code, when you run it, all of a sudden you see a key, because the skeleton code that's already there is programmed to tell you if you see something. So that's really, really nice when you go to a room and then you see something that's already there. So when you have this, you do get key, and then all of a sudden you'll have an inventory, and the inventory will say key. So as you look at the code, if you're just curious to see what this goes, so you show your status. This is what this code says. Show the status every time you're in there. So you'll print that line, which is these lines. It'll say what room you're in. You are in the hall. What's in your inventory? You currently have a key. And if an item is in a room, print you see a, and then what's in that current room, which is what we had there. You see a key. So those are important. And then when you get the key, you're in the hall, you'll notice that the key is gone. It's no longer there. And then that's where, down at the bottom of the code, that's all the information of if your move is get, which you type in, and there's an item in the room, you get it, and then right here, it deletes the item from the room. So you don't just end up collecting key after key after key after key, it gets rid of it. If there's not that in the room, I love it, this if-else statement, it'll break, you can't get whatever is there. So if you misspell key, so I'll show you if I type this, get key, you can't get key. It'll show you, because that's not what it's coded to get. Get key. Key got. So it's nice in this one, you don't have to worry about capitalization with what you're getting, as long as it's spelled correctly. So as you look at that, again, it could be get key. The key still got. You can always adjust the grammar on that key got. It drives me insane. You could always say you picked up and then change the code around a little bit if you really want to. So adding that item, you have that key, it's there. Once that's locked in, go ahead, boom, click that check mark, and then you can add new items. So adding items you can add to any room, right? So if I wanted to add an item in the kitchen, I would just say item here, space, colon, and these, of course, I made a mistake in my code, and I'm going to show you because of my fingers. These should be single quote marks, and I dropped the ball on that one, and we're fixing them. And again, common total rookie mistake. But even someone who's building code are going to make mistakes. So there we go. Item, key, item, let's say, I don't know, what is in a kitchen? A whisk. There you go. And then there is a whisk in the kitchen. So if I were to stop, play my game, go to the kitchen, which is south. There we go. I see a whisk and get the whisk. I have the whisk. It's all set. Hold on, everyone. The keys to my car. They should be on the island in the center, right around there. Sorry. This is what it's like working whiskey. Yes. Whiskey is also what you could have in there, Chris. That's an excellent point. So you can add items. You can bounce them around. You can put tons. You can really have as many items as you want. Avoid putting more than one item in a room, though. That can get crazy for the code as it's trying to see what's happening. So let's try this. So item, add another one to see what really happens. Item, let's call it car, because why not? And see what happens. Stop, run. it says you see a car, right? The first item has vanished. So we really want to avoid putting more than one item in a room. Okay, so there's that tip for you. As kids will try to stack rooms with a lot of different things, and we don't want that. So add an enemy. It sounds so rough to add an enemy, but we need one, right? To have a game, you have to have a bad guy. Adding an enemy to a room is easy as adding another item. Let's add hungry monster. So you'll notice in a different room that doesn't have the item, the key, they've added a monster. So if we go back to my code, I already have whisk there, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add monster. I'm just going to delete that, stop, and run the code. So what you have now is an item and a monster in another room. The kitchen is one place you can put it. So what'll happen is you want to make sure that the game ends if the player enters a room with a monster in it. You can do this with the following code, which you should add at the end of your game. So you'll notice this code here. I'm going to highlight that. Player loses if they enter a room with a monster. So all of this code you're going to want to copy. And then you're going to scroll to the end of your code. Okay, and this is where you're going to add it. So one of the most important things to keep in mind is where it ends up being added, right? So you'll notice here, if I hit tab once, it takes me to that first line. If I hit tab twice, it takes me to that line. If I hit you a third time, it lines me up with that. So if we pay attention to where the code is, you'll notice that the if starts all the way to the left, and it's going to be 2 tabs over. So if we add this to our code over here, boop, we want to move this over, that over, this, there. And that should have our code all in the right spot. A thing you can always do if you like to look at your code like a little more separated, you can skip that line right there just to give it a little space. But if items in the room right there and monster is in the room connected to item, print a monster has got you, game over. And the most important part is the break. The break ends the game. It makes you have to start the game all over. So if we did this right, we run our code, and I go south, there it is. A monster has got you, game over. The end, that's it. So that's how you end your game. So the point of the game is to avoid the monster. So once we have that, that's super simple. Adding that down here, the code is saved. So we go back to what we have to do next. Test out your code, we did it. Good job, everyone. Adding more monsters. Add more monsters to your game to make it harder to escape your house. So if you add more rooms, adding more monsters is a wonderful way to sort of keep it going. Okay, but you don't want to make it too difficult so every time you walk into a room you die. Makes it a very not fun game to play. So the next step is winning the game. So how do we win the game, right? So in this game, the player wins by getting to the garden and escaping the house. They also need to have the key with them and the magic potion. And here's the map of the game that they've created. So you see they have their kitchen with the monster, the hall has the key, the dining room has a potion, and then there's a garden. So what do we need to do? So the dining room needs to have a connection to the garden south. And then we need to create garden and then add north to the dining room. So take a look at that. And again, another thing you do, you can always just copy and paste, which is a very easy thing to do. So you can always just copy this guy here. And then go back to your code. And just go ahead and add it here. So we've added the garden north to the dining room. So that means we have to here add south goes to the garden. And don't forget the comma. Yeah, Clement, that's a great point. I think the kids who play Minecraft will find mapping a piece of cake. I totally agree. And really, our kids were doing a great job sort of thinking of it that way. In our classroom, we use the big whiteboards to do it, but a piece of paper with each room and drawing and connecting to it has been a wonderful way to sort of just map out a room and just be able to carry it with them and then be able to look at that. A great part, if you're going to do this in your class, is having kids share that map that they've created to see that they've actually gone through that process of creating a map and then building something from it. So we've got the south is the garden. Um, Boom, there you go. And then you've got the garden down here going north. Excellent. So the next thing that we need to do, here we go, is we have to add a potion. Boop. We've got to add a potion to the dining room. So that's just an item and potion. So go back to our code. There's our dining room. Oops, I made a mistake. I put my garden. See, look at this. This is me making mistakes. I put my, there we go, in the wrong spot. That makes way more sense. There we go. And then we're going to add an item. And it is the potion. There we go. So now our potion is there in the dining room, and we go to the dining room from the hall by going west, and we go east to the dining room, and there we have it. So far we have all of our items in the right spot, hopefully. Hopefully we put everything where it needs to go. So next step, okay, add this code to allow the player to win the game when they get to the garden with the key and the potion. So here we are here, this code. Now this is, again, super important. It needs to be placed in this order. You have to have losing the game first and then winning the game second. Because as the code cycles through, it checks for certain things. So if you don't have check your item and your monster gets you first, it'll skip that and you'll never be able to die because it's checking those things. So order of operation is important. It's a great thing for kids to think about. How things happen in code teaches you that one thing after another, up to top to bottom, is what's being recorded. So we go all the way back to the bottom here, and we're going to add this code right here. And again, when you copy and paste, it sometimes ends up in the wrong spot. So this is where your tabs come in handy to move things over. So in this code, it says if the current room is the garden and key is inventory and the potion is in the inventory, print, you escape the house, you win. So, oh, looks like I've made a mistake somewhere. And it says I made a mistake. I did put on line 61. Current room is hall. Let's see where I made a mistake. Somewhere in my code. Oh, and this is where I made my mistake. I forgot to add this final one here. And there you go. Another common mistake. I totally did on purpose to show you like the type of mistakes that you'll make. That's a common one, is to make sure that I always say every bracket has a pair, right? So that the top one goes to that one, that goes to there, that goes to there, and so forth. So that's something that, again, a mistake that is common by students is that they're missing that last bracket or they're missing a comma here. So always checking the brackets is the first thing I'll do. And it was actually kind of nice. I'm actually going to do it again to show you the error. Syntax error says bad input on line 62. So here's the problem. When you see an error code, it doesn't always mean the error is actually on line 62. Right? And our mistake, it wasn't our mistake, my mistake. It actually wasn't that specific spot. It's always something on that line or above it. And for us, we knew this is where this was. Yoink. So that's where that went. So it's always important not to obsess over specifically where it says that error is. That's usually saying, oh, that's where the code crashed. And so you need to look usually at that line or above it to see what's missing, a misspelling, a comma, and things of that nature. So we run it again. There we go. So let's pick up things and let's see if my code works. So I'm going to pick up the key. There we go. I'm going to go east next. I'm going to get the potion. And then I'm going to go south. You escape the house. You win. Ta-da! Look at me. I am a hardcore gamer, everyone. There you go. So hopefully you've built a game that you can actually do that. And then you test your game out. Ta. And there you go. Now, the next thing it wants you to do is let's add some instructions. So the player knows what they have to do. Edit the show instruction function to include more information. So they've got all of this here under the define show instructions RPG game. So they actually have this bit of information. Oh, Chris points out, I notice that text is red when it is correct and black when something is wrong. Yeah, the color coding in Trinket is really strong to tell you what's working and what's not. And it'll really auto-fill in too. If you type in the single quote mark, it'll actually create the other one on the other side, so you just fill in so you don't forget to add the other one. It's actually really helpful that way. So we've got this last part here to add the directions. So if we were to copy all of this, it says print all the way up to here, go to our code where it has the directions. So we can go ahead, copy this, and then replace it. There you go. All of our code is in place there. So now it shows you the information here. Get to the garden with a key and a potion, avoid the monsters. So whatever you essentially type in between these quote marks is what's going to appear there. So go, direction, get, item. Again, you can type legitimately anything you want, and that'll appear in the code. You can see it there. So that's sort of fun because really the kids can type in whatever they want as their directions. So as they build their code out, their directions and the information that they want to put there is really important. So we go back to that, test your game. It totally worked. And then the final one is develop your own game. You could add stairs to your map and have more than one level of rooms by typing go up and go down. So this is where things can be crazy. So I'm going to show you some of the things that I did in my code. So if you want to go to my game, let me share that with you in the group chat link. I will share everything here for you. What's really nice about this chat, there you go. That should open up the shared version. And in the upper right-hand corner, you should actually see a remix option. You're totally welcome to remix it and hold a copy of it so you can see what I did and sort of like copy and paste certain things I've done to make life a little bit easier for you. So some of the things that I did that really changed this up. So a thing of note, if your text is green, it's because you put a hashtag by it. That means it won't show up in the code. It's a way to leave notes to yourself, to other coders that are looking at the code. So as you see this, tons of code here. And then I dropped in from time, import sleep, and then import random. I added these things here because I added different features to the game that were not originally there. So from import sleep and random to for the pauses and text and the random module for the treasures. So what I wanted to do is that I make the ability to find treasures in rooms by searching, and I also wanted added pauses in between the information. Is there any advantage in using Python 3 offline versus Trinket with an older Python for the free account? That's a great question. Not that I've noticed at all. The free account is all we've used with our students. It has everything that you need to do. Python 3 doesn't do anything with this. With Trinket, code can be easily shared against. Oh yeah, that's the other nice part of it, is that the code is super easy to share. And if you are a Google Classroom type of world or whatever LMS that you have, copying and these links to your games are super easy to do. And that's the one reason I liked it so much and using it with our kids is that they can share their games very easily. So as you see here, I've got my directions for my game, and this is the part where we want to think about storytelling, the narrative that you're going to create. So one of the things that I had kids do was do a rough outline of what their story is going to be and how they're going to share this story as it unfolds. So for me, what I wanted to do was add a whole bunch of elements that allow this from happening. So what I have here is the directions, but in the directions, really, I added a whole narrative. So it's a full story so that when you play the game, here it is, and you start the game, what they get is a full set of directions. The name, you have read in the news, old man, you are trapped in the house, you must find the potion, sword, key, and gold bar before being able to exit the front door. There are other items hidden in the house that you can search for, but beware of traps that can kill you. Only the amulet can protect you from the traps, and the sword will save you from monsters. And then for the commands, I added north, south, east, west, up, or down. Get will give you items, and then if you type search treasure, you have a chance to get a random treasure. So as we look at my code, how did I do all of that? Well, here we go. One of the things that I did was add a library where it's a treasure. And I added all of the different treasures that you could possibly find. Bracelet, jewel crown, silver watch, gold ring, diamond pendant, and amulet. And again, the amulet is what can save you from traps. I also added a bunch of different ways that you could die from a trap. So there's a whole bunch of other ones here, but notice how every single one ends with a comma. Got to have the comma when you are laying things out here. Now, other things that I did. So in the original code, you had the simple things. If items in the room, say you see a room. So I took that code from Raspberry Pi and said, oh, well, all I need to do is change item to something else, and that'll be the same thing that happens. So I added what's called see story, hear story, and stairs. So that when you play my game, there we go. Oh, that's not my game. This is my game. You start off in the attic, inventory is empty, and then there's a whole bunch of the story here. You see a skeleton in the corner of the room. You jump with fright, but soon realize it is fake. You look around the room and you see rays of light coming from the corner. As you move closer, you see a set of stairs heading down. And it says, you see attic stairs. So when we look at my code and we go to the very first room, stairs, attic stairs, see story, type in all of that information, right? Print all of that information. And that's what my code says. See story, print, you see, and then you have the whole story that'll unfold. And then you have, if the stairs are in the room, say, hey, you see stairs. So there are stairs, and it says, you see attic stairs. Now, I have hidden in the room treasure. So if I were to go to my game and search treasure, I found some treasure, nice job. And it says that I have a jeweled crown in my inventory now. So when we scroll all the way to the bottom of my code, here we go. We'll find out to where the treasure is. So you'll notice that my code gets far more complex as you get moving. So else if your move is search. If hidden is in the room and you move in the room and hidden's there, print, you found some treasure, nice job. Then it says inventory plus equals random dot choice for the treasure, which means that it'll pull a random item and place it in the treasure. I know this can be super overwhelming and super confusing, but that's why I shared my code with you. And if you make a copy of it, do not hesitate to just lift my code and drop it into what you're doing. Feel free to share my game with your students and have them lift my code and add that to their game, okay? Because while it's great that kids can learn to code and utilize this and have fun with it, this isn't a Python intense coding course where we need the kids to master all of these aspects. It's really an ELA exercise of storytelling, and a way to do the storytelling is by having them fill in some of these blanks. So as you look at my code further down, if there's a trap in the room and treasure is in the room and an amulet is in your inventory, you survive. However, if there's a trap in the room and you search, you're going to get killed. And it'll print a random choice from the traps. So again, I use the hashtag in every single area that tells you what each code is going to do. And so that'll help guide you. You're like, wait, what does this do? Huh? I've also added some things and X'd some things out because I'm not sure if I like them. But if you're in the room, you search and it happens to be a trap, the game is over. There's the break. Okay. Another code I've been playing with is that instead of actually ending the game, you would put this here and then do those. And what would happen is you start the game back over in the attic, having emptied your inventory. I'm not that much of a fan of it, but it definitely can be something that you could add to your game if you want. Else, if nothing is in there, there's no treasure, there's no trap, and you search, it'll print nothing is found. So another part of the game that can be very difficult is going into a room and dying all the time. So I wrote a code that you can kill the monster if you have a sword. So if a player has a sword in a room that has a monster, the player lives. So this code does that. So if monster's in the room and that monster is labeled a werewolf and the sword is in the inventory, print, you enter the room and it'll say you survive, and then you don't want to stick around to find out what that is, so get moving. It needs to be above the code that has the killing monster. The reason for that, again, is order of operation. Because if this is ahead of it, it'll always kill you because it reads, oh, you are in the room and there is a monster, you're dead. It checks to see if you have a sword first in this code, which is how you get to survive. Excuse me. And when it comes to winning the game, you can add as many things as you require for them to get to win. So I have a key, gold, potion, sword. And there you have it. And then I have the long story of how you win, and that's sort of like the end of it. So as we look at creating this, and the one thing that made this really, really, really long game is that I built levels. So kids can go up and down stairs. So you start in the attic, you go down the stairs. And then you can go all the way around, and if they see stairs, they have the option to try to go up or down them, which is brilliant. So you can now think three-dimensionally in terms of building this house and what it looks like. And again, we say house, but it could be anything. It could be rooms on a pirate ship. It could be rooms on a space station. It could be a cave system far underground near the center of the earth. The fun thing about that is that the rooms, right, can be whatever you describe them to be. And every time I have a C story, that's what it is. It's just rooms with story and more story. And if you play my game, you'll see more of the story unfold. Right? A mist floats away in the hallway. If I were to go east, I hear a faint whispering of multiple voices. I walked into that's my fun one. If you walk in a direction that there's no room, I typed in the code, you walked into a wall, smooth move. The little sense of humor can go a long way as you do this. But it tells you in the code, in the story, what you see. And you'll see there's a trail of yarn that disappears behind a door to the east. The door to the west is covered in symbols you do not recognize and a carving of a large serpent. So the story that you're building in will also tell the kids what directions they can go in, like what's available to them. What do they actually see? So if I were to go, let's see, how about we go east again. There we go. We're in another room. And then it says the door to the east has a picture of a clown that hangs at eye level. That's totally unsettling. But if I go into there, I've walked into a wall and I hear a loud howl. So you keep building all of this, and more of the story unfolds. Uh, there we go. I get the sword, and if I get the sword, there we go. I have the sword, and now I can't die unless I find a trap. So this sort of walks you through the basics of creating the game, and if you really want to step it up and add tons more to the game. So what I'll do now, there, let's see, stop sharing there. It's just my giant face right now. And I will unmute everyone, or you can unmute yourselves. If you can unmute yourself and want to ask a question, that's cool. Or you can go ahead and type into the chat, and just do a couple of minutes of people that have questions, and if not, this will be saved. Yeah, and then I'll post it. So if anyone has a question, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Matt.
Hey, what kind of timeline do you use for this in a classroom?
Great question. So the timeline is really dependent on age level and really the skill level of your kids. So one of the things that I did for this is we had the kids read some stories like adventure or scary stories beforehand to give them a sense of sort of like the structure of like what that type of story is. So think of some Edgar Allan Poe type stuff, Gothic literature, sort of like a good sort of like entry into it. And then we gave the kids a day to outline a story. So we give them the class period, like what would your story look like? How crazy would that be? All the different aspects of it. And particularly, items that are important, the main character, like who you are, the adversary, and then how do you win the game. So those parts and everything else is sort of filled in the middle. Then we would spend about 2 to 3 class periods building the game out, with the first part being drawing out the map. And then how many rooms you want is all dependent on the teacher. We told the kids that we worked with that we wanted at least 5 rooms. But we set the bar low, and kids were more than happy to create 20 or 30 rooms. I mean, some kids just really loved it so much that they really went full out and loved challenging each other. So there's a couple days for that. And then we spent, I think, a day playing each other's games and leaving feedback. Oh, I love this part, or can I have the code for this, and stuff like that. So this can really be used in the course of a week if you meet every single day for like 45 minutes. But if we're all doing distance learning, this is definitely something that you can spend more time on and really give them an opportunity to flesh out the story, to really create some complex rooms and really have some fun with it. And then have the kids share and then play each other's games, which is tremendously fun for the kids.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions that people might have? Going once, going twice, and sold. Thank you guys for everyone that showed up. I will post this, and we can share that out to anyone that is looking to do this and have some fun. I would love to see your students' games, so don't hesitate to share those out. Tag me in them. For sure, that would be super, super fun, because we really want the kids to engage and share and do as much as possible. So thank you for joining me from everywhere and anywhere around the world, and share this with others. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me at The Nerdy Teacher. Post that here on Twitter and Instagram, or you can check out thenerdyteacher.com for stuff on my website and stuff like that. And then you can always search me on Amazon, and you can check out some of my books there that dive into project-based learning and ELA, makerspaces, and things of that nature. So perfect hour presentation. Thank you everyone so much. I'm going to end the meeting. I'm going to download this and then post it, and then we'll go from there. So thanks again. Take care everyone, and enjoy.